Hello, beautiful moms and entrepreneurs. This is a place where we come together to learn, grow, and inspire. So sit back, relax, and let's get started. Hello, Unbreakable Mompreneurs. My name is Sharice Walker, and today I'm here with Lisa Small. Before we talk about things, we're at the end of the beginning of the year, and it's all about what do we want to accomplish this year and how are we going to do that. And so Lisa is going to be on today talking about habitual growth and what we can do. So why don't you introduce yourself, Lisa?
Oh, thank you, Sharice. Yes, I'm Lisa Small. I'm one of the co-founders of Habitual Growth, and we are dedicated to helping deliver people's best versions of themselves, whatever that looks like. So setting goals, building habits, establishing consistent momentum to live lives of intention, whatever that looks like for each individual.
So I was listening, I don't even know what it was, but I was listening to something and they talked about how more and more people are not even setting goals anymore. Why do you think that is?
I think it's a combination of a couple things. I think one, there's everywhere you go, you're supposed to set some sort of goal. You're supposed to have personal goals and couple goals and goals in the business if you work for a company. And so I think people just get burned out because it feels like there's too many things to set goals around versus where do I personally want to spend my time and energy is kind of how I think about setting goals. And then I think the flip side is just the pace of life. I mean, we continue to move faster and faster and faster, and slowing down to think about actually setting goals and mapping out how to get there, I think sometimes just gets brushed to the wayside because we're trying to keep up with the pace of life.
How did you decide to get into this?
Not on purpose.
Mhm.
Um, no, as I mentioned, co-founded this company with my brother, and we both have been very invested in the personal development space for a long time and worked on setting goals and intentionally designing our days so that we were moving forward towards whatever it was that we're currently working on. And about 5 years ago, our father was diagnosed suddenly out of the blue with stage 4 cancer and survived about 10 months. And going through that and watching him pass away, and then the way he was honored in his memorial service by the people in the community, because he was a leader, he was very much a servant leader, giving back and helping and trying to create that positive ripple effect. We felt like it was a good intersection of how we could create his legacy and continue to do work on his behalf without him being there, and also inspire people to take control of their own lives and to do the same for their own ripple effect in their communities.
I love that. And something I had a coach, and a big thing that we talked about is becoming a community market leader. Like if you want to make an impact and then serve, not sell.
Yeah.
And that's something that has really stuck true because, I was talking to you about you were sitting in the waiting room for a minute because I was here 10 minutes early, but I got a text from someone and they basically said, hey, we're not going to sell our house because we're going to work on our marriage. We're not going to get a divorce. And I'm like, yay, and most people would be like, okay, you just lost business. I'm like, no, no, no. I wrote a book and let me help you with that. I can help with relationships. And so it's so rewarding to try to help people. And what better way when they have kids to try to save a marriage, right? And so
Sorry.
that's something where normally people would be like, what? You're not trying to talk me out of it, or you're trying to encourage it? I'm like, heck to the no. I've been through that, right? And so with goals, it's the same type of thing. When people hear the word goals, sometimes they're like, oh, okay, great. But those are very rare, right? And others are like, ah, or I'll set them, but now I'm going to disappoint myself. And so how do you approach that with people?
I actually just talked about this yesterday on my story on Instagram, and I think a lot of the negative emotion that people feel maybe around goals, or kind of that hesitation or procrastination, comes from prior experience with trying to set goals. And so instead of just hearing the word goal as what it is, it's
Mhm.
basically a planning mechanism of where you want to be at X point in the future. we now associate all these negative emotions. And that could be because you fell off the wagon, you weren't successful at something, you felt completely overwhelmed, or you've never actually set anything. And so I try to encourage people to find ways to describe the goal setting process without using the words that evoke such negative emotions. So if you think about, let's say someone says, I really, in a year, I want to be more of X in this area. Well, instead of saying, let's set a goal around this, let's say, what do you want that to look like? What does it feel like? What does it look like? Are there financial implications? And let's just create a vision of that and change the word that we're associating with it, because I think that sometimes turns people off.
It does. And so what does your company do to help with that?
So we meet people where they are. So we recognize that everybody starts from different places, brings different things to the table. And sometimes people need to start again. And so we meet people where they are, and then we walk through with them, what do you want this optimal to look like? And that could be different for every person. It could be someone that's just really starting out in the personal development space or the professional development space and says, I don't even know where to start. Okay, great. Let's focus on the next 2 weeks to 30 days. Let's define what that looks like. Or it could be someone that's way more experienced and they're now talking 5-10 years out. And we help individuals create that roadmap and learn to craft their days with intentional action so that they are building foundation after foundation step towards whatever it is that they're working on.
I have a coach that there's 5 circles, right? And so you have the intellectual, you have the spiritual, you have the professional, you have, you name it, right? So do you recommend setting goals in every one of those, or do you recommend just setting one or two in specific areas and focusing on that? Like, what is your experience?
So we use a platform that's a mobile application, and we have those buckets. And the way that we approach them is balance looks different for everybody. So when we talk about balance, when it comes to goal setting, it is more in, so how does this best look for you? So for me, I am a very professionally motivated person. That is a bucket that I get a lot of energy from and motivation from. I also have a hard time turning it off. So I have specific goals set around being present and being more mindful, because I know it's an area that I am not as skilled in. Now, likewise, someone could take it and say, okay, well, I'm really good over in this business area, in this professional area. I'm going to set a goal there because I really think I can push it further. So it really comes down to the individual doing a self-reflection of saying, where do I feel like it's most important that I spend my time within those buckets? And then picking probably no more than 3, I usually say 2 goals to get started on, and working towards that. You can always add more, but it can feel overwhelming, and you can become quickly defeated if you set too many and try to do too much all at once.
Yeah, because I've tried that.
Me too. It's okay.
I read the 12-week year, and that honestly was quite life-changing, because they talk about you make, well, I'll let people read it, but you take 12 weeks and it's basically 12 months. And so it really, you focus on 1 or 2 or 3, and in whichever ones those are that you feel like you need to improve on. And it usually, when you're not doing well in one, that typically carries over to your other areas of life, right?
Yes.
And so what are some success stories that you've had with people? You don't have to go into the details of who and stuff, but I love to hear stories about people who were not in a good place and then they went into a good place.
Yeah, so we have so many. It's so great. I just love it. I get so inspired by people. So we have had a woman, so I'll give you just a couple quick examples. So we run a challenge at the beginning of every year. The first 100 days of the year, commit to 10,000 steps a day as a foundational practice of consistency. And so she joined being completely new last year, and ended up 50 pounds lighter after learning to create that daily discipline, and then went on to set additional goals around building muscle and nutrition. She was counting macros and things like that. So for her, that was a very personal physical aspect. We also had a woman who was a very high sales executive at a global company, who went through the process, and it was more about intentionally being present and doing actions that supported her team, versus, personal goals. But she went on to receive numerous awards and promotions, for team development and leadership. So that was kind of a professional one. Yeah, she's out there rocking it. So it's totally what you make it. We've also had people that have gone on to be workers within organizations that then find a new hobby, love, passion, that they have created into successful businesses on the side.
I love that because that's something where my kids at Christmas, they receive a letter from Santa every year. And it usually talks
Oh,
about what they've done well, and then he'll give some advice on what he'd like to see changed. And with a few of my kids, it's like, okay, well, let's remember last year at this time where you were, where are you this year?
yep.
Um, and it's not meant to make them feel bad or anything, but it's one of those things that it really is easy. Time goes so quickly when we're adults, especially. And
Yes.
if we don't make intentional planning or make an intentional plan, or if we don't make an intentional goal, right?
Yep.
You're not going anywhere. You're not climbing up.
No.
If anything, you might be sliding backwards. And that's the part that it's like, okay, where do you want to be? And there's a reason why every business that is successful has metrics, has a plan, and here's where we need to work towards. Because if they show up every day and their employees are like, oh, yay, I'm here for work, but they don't know what they're working towards, then what's the point?
What's the
So,
point? Yeah.
with our listeners, obviously, we're entrepreneurs. So, what is your recommendation, especially with the new year that's happening? What's your recommendation to not get overwhelmed, but to have a purpose and a plan?
Yeah, I would say from an entrepreneurial standpoint, I think it's a really good idea. People have not yet is to do that self-reflection that you just talked
Mhm.
about. It doesn't have to be from Santa,
Yeah.
but just take inventory. So, how do you need to show up differently in the new year to be better at the end of the year when it comes to your business? Is that leadership? Is that is that a sales skill that you have to develop? Is it some other technical skill? Is it shutting it down for a period of time? So
Mhm.
just taking inventory of, yes, here's all the things I accomplished, in 2024. Here's maybe where I want to do things differently. And then just set one or two goals around that.
Mhm.
Because the one thing that I think people miss when it comes to goal setting and working towards your goals is the fact that that's leading by example. And so, especially for entrepreneurs that have employees, you are leading and showing them how they can get better as well, and that you're invested in the business and doing things actively to be more successful than you were the year before.
Mhm. That's fantastic. So, because you've started the business not too long ago, right? A couple years ago.
Couple years, yep.
Okay, so let's talk about that type of
Oh,
as an
yes.
entrepreneur. What is some advice that you would give people who are starting out now that you've had it going for a couple years that you wish you would have known or you could have done differently had you known?
Oh, I think it, and I don't know if it's maybe do something differently. For me, it's the you're gonna hit the doldrums phase where it feels like nothing is working out and it's going to be longer than you want it to
Mhm.
be, and to keep going. And I know that's a common theme. I hear it across the internet too, but it's really true. And we felt it probably most heavily this year. I mean, the earlier years we were much more in the development phase, building our platform, getting that fine-tuned, rolling it out. And now is this fast scaling phase where we've got all these things in the air,
Mhm.
trying to figure out how to best bring on people to support, whether that's contractors or employees, how to get the messaging out there in social media. And we just hit this phase where it was like nothing seemed to be
Mhm. Mhm.
turning. And now we hit the stage, and it picked back up. But I think that took me by surprise, actually. Was okay, I know it's an up and a down journey. I've heard that over and over. But man, when you're in it, it's really hard to
Mhm.
dig deep and find the motivation to keep moving forward.
I think that 2024, I've talked with a lot of business owners, and it was hard for everybody.
Yeah.
I feel like things picked up, at least even in my businesses, the last quarter of the year.
Yeah.
But the first part, I don't know what was happening. It was just So much
It was
uncertainty.
brutal.
Yeah, and a lot of people kind of closed their pocketbooks and said, "I got to put the brakes on some stuff and figure
Yeah.
things out." And so that's a fantastic piece of advice because the doldrums, I like that word. And you start to like, is this really what I want to do? You have that soul searching. But I think that we all need to remember that every business goes, it's like a peak. And I don't want to call it a valley, but it could be a plateau. And then you go to the
Mhm.
next, because as you continue to scale your business, you have to, like you talked about, readjust. Who do we bring on? What do we do? What systems do we need to now include that we didn't have before? And so it's a period of growth, and then you got to like catch up for that and prepare for the next growth phase. And so that's great advice.
Thank you.
What are some other things that you would recommend people starting this year out, and what do you recommend that they do for their business?
Um, the other thing that I really think is important for people to reflect on and sometimes set goals around or be mindful of is, are the people that are engaged with your business still the right people? Because I love that you just talked about, you grow, you grow, you grow, then you hit a plateau potentially. And sometimes I'm guilty of it too, when you have a business and you have people that have been involved for a period of time, you grow attached to them
Yeah,
and you're invested in them, and hitting a spot of honesty with yourself as the business owner to say, are these still the right people that
right.
I can take to the next level, that I should take to the next level? And really understanding to a very granular level what skills and opportunities are needed over the next year to effectively grow your business to that next plateau potentially. And a lot of that comes from the people, and whether that's just engagement, from an audience standpoint or a client standpoint. Do I have the right clients? Am I
Yeah.
targeting the right clients? Should I make a shift there to employees or contractors that are supporting your business?
Yeah, that is so true. I have a client right now that they for so long they call themselves brokers. They're not licensed, but
Okay.
they I call them more of a connector, right? So you have an investor that comes in, they need money to buy this house and flip it. And so they connect with these people and they get them hooked up. Well, they've been working with 300 to $400,000 clients. And I'm like, how about we look at these $1 million clients, and because it's the same amount of time, it's just way more money. And he's just like, oh my gosh, I never even thought about this. So I said, how about you look into maybe ownership, taking a piece of that little pie rather than taking a couple thousand at the beginning, because let's talk about long term. And so it's very interesting because they've been tunnel vision. Sometimes they don't know what to do. And I think someone like you can come out and say, okay, let's let's look at a bigger picture here. And so for years they've been doing that. He's like, I cannot believe it. I've been wasting my time and $600 for this much time. And I'm just, yeah, let's
Yeah.
expand. I want you to think about, this is a totally off the cuff question
All
for you.
right.
But you're on a park bench and this 9-month pregnant woman walks up to you and she sits down, and this is her first child. And you've seen the gamut of where your children are from where you started as a mom. What is one piece of advice you would give her as a mom?
Oh, I think the biggest piece of advice that I would give is be honest when you're not perfect. It's something that is I found as a mom. My oldest is 20. My son is 10 now, and I have a middle in there. That was really hard for me to swallow. As a mom, I think we want to make everything better and do everything right and never be wrong, but we are, and being able to verbalize that to your children carries such powerful weight when it comes to teaching them how to grow into adults and own their mistakes and talk about them in a way that doesn't make them feel bad about themselves, but offers them opportunity to do things differently the next time.
That is such good advice. And I always say that parenting adult children is the hardest thing ever because you know the path they're going down and you don't want,
Yeah.
you're like, don't do that. And yet they need to. I mean, some
Yeah.
people, they learn the hard way. That's just they like to take the hardest path possible. And others are like, they're perfect. They do everything the way they should. But that's their journey. And that's what I finally had to realize is I love you. I don't want to watch this, but I'm not going to lecture anymore because you're like my twins are 25 now, and it's like they're adults. And so you get to live your life, Charlie Brown, and I'll be here
That's
to
right.
bad. But they know right from wrong. You've taught them. And so that's something where you have to understand and believe in yourself as a parent that what you've done the best that you can with what you've had and what you've been given. And so let them go forward and be there when they need you.
That's
And
right. Yeah.
so that's a great
Lovely.
Well, if our listeners want to find you, how do they get a hold of you?
The social media platform that we're most active on is Instagram, and that's at Habitual Growth 1. Habitualgrowth.com is our website. And anyone can find me, Lisa Small, on Instagram as well, and on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on there. So if you send me a direct message, I will respond, and would love to connect with your listeners.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for being on.
Yeah, thank you, Cherise. This was awesome.
And moms, take some baby steps and just choose one or two things that you want to focus on this year and achieve it and go after it with confidence. Go out and make it a great day. Beautiful moms, remember, you are unbreakable. Keep illuminating the world with your strength, pursuing your dreams, and reveling in the splendor of motherhood. This is Cherise Walker, bidding you farewell for now. Stay tuned for more empowering conversations on the next episode of the Unbreakable Mompreneurs podcast. Until then, keep shining bright. Signing off with love, Cherise Walker.